Hi, it's Kai. From total blackouts to global pandemics, there are plenty of disasters waiting to happen. Not to be a negative Nancy, but you should definitely know about them and probably be prepared. Number 8, the blackout. Picture, right now, your daily routine, from how you wake up in the morning, to how you eat, to what you do for work, where you travel and how you get there, etc. Now, after you have pictured all of that, answer me this very simple question. How much of that depends on electronics? For example, you likely wake up to an alarm clock in the literal sense, or your phone, right? Eating requires a toaster, or an oven, or a refrigerator in some measure. You drive a car, or take a bus or train to work. And more than likely, you interact with a phone or computer at some point during your day, or maybe all day. This is typical with how the world works right now. Now, imagine in the blink of an eye, everything around you powers down, and it doesn't turn back on. You've likely already experienced this before with sudden power outages in your home or city area. These are caused by simple faults in the circuit, downed power lines, and more. It's inconvenient, but not exactly a disaster. However, there is one that many people are expecting in the form of a nationwide blackout by a device called an EMP. An electromagnetic pulse is a device that is able to quite literally short out any and all electronics in an area. Some only have short-term effects, but some can be permanent, meaning that the device will not work unless certain parts are completely replaced, and sometimes even that won't work. So imagine a place like the United States being hit with an EMP bomb, let's say the East Coast. Imagine New York, Boston, Washington, D.C., Orlando, and more being completely in the dark with no clues as to when the lights will turn back on, or if they can be turned back on. That kind of panic will cause people to do some really bad things. There are measures in place to try to prevent this, but with technology evolving constantly, it's hard to imagine that anything will truly block an EMP when it comes. Plus, there is the fact that a national blackout could happen just by faults in the system. It's happened before, including in Texas during the blizzards in early 2021. But whether it be natural or man-made, the danger of a blackout for long periods of time could destabilize everything in the worst way possible. Number 7, volcanoes. Volcanoes are truly incredible forces of Mother Nature. But hey, they helped make the islands that we inhabit today. And while we're grateful, we also need to be mindful, because a volcanic eruption that isn't prepared for is a disaster literally waiting to happen. From the rocks and smoke that are sent flying in the area to the lava that pours out, it's a terrifying thing. Lava can be 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and that means it can melt just about anything it touches, including humans near instantly. Now, if you're curious as to how this is an anytime natural disaster, that's because volcanoes can truly erupt anytime they want to, and there's really no way to prevent them from erupting. Not to mention, there are many dormant volcanoes out there that people are monitoring because of how likely they are to erupt again. There are places like Mount St. Helens, Mount Fuji, and even the supervolcano at Yosemite National Park that are said to be potential eruptors at any given moment. Deadly ash would also spread for thousands of miles. The devastation that these could cause are not to be ignored, and thus many keep an eye on them just to make sure they're not caught off guard should one start to wake up. Number 6, the big one. If you heard the word earthquake, your mind would likely go to places like California, where earthquakes are not only somewhat common, they are known to be downright devastating. Whether earthquakes are common where you live or not, they are mostly determined by what fault lines you are next to. Fault lines are lines in the ground, above or below the ocean, that can be traced back to tectonic plates. And when these plates move or collide, they can cause ripples that can result in the earth breaking apart and ultimately devastating the region. In the United States, California is the most famous for its earthquakes because it's next to the infamous San Andreas fault line, which has caused many earthquakes in the past, and there are certain scientists that believe that the fault line is gearing up for something big, really big. This all got started in 2006 when a paper was written stating that the San Andreas fault line was due for a big one, meaning an earthquake of incredible strength, not unlike the 1906 earthquake that quite literally rocked California to its core. The reason for this is that it's believed the southern part of the fault line has been building up tension, and when that tension is released, well, the phrase shake, rattle, and roll feels appropriate here. Should this earthquake happen, it would cause untold devastation. Deaths would be in the thousands, and the damages would be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. The worst part about this disaster, though, is that it's literally impossible to know when said earthquake will happen. In 2019, a series of earthquakes rocked California and had over 150 aftershocks, which no one saw coming and no one can really explain. So if those on that scale couldn't be predicted, how can we really know when the big one comes? Exactly, and that's why it's so terrifying, because given how fault lines and tectonic plates work, they are incredibly hard to predict what will happen with them. But we can say that if and when the big one comes, you'll know when it's here. Have you ever experienced an earthquake before? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 5, sinkholes. Sinkholes are something that definitely can happen at any time, and that's why they're dangerous. But that begs the question, how does a sinkhole form? Well, it literally has to do with the earth under your feet. The ground you stand on, regardless of whether it's natural or not, has a strength to it. When natural dirt and other elements get weakened to a certain point to where they can't hold any more weight, it collapses upon itself. When it does this, a literal hole starts to form in the ground. It gets bigger and bigger until the weakened dirt is basically all out of the way. By that token, a sinkhole can be very small or incredibly large and incredibly deep. As numerous videos have shown, sinkholes can form randomly out in nature, in big cities, and more. Sure, it's unlikely that one might form where you are right now, but it's not as impossible as you likely expected beforehand. The size of the sinkholes vary, but some have been known to be thousands of feet in diameter and incredibly deep. They're known to swallow buildings, cars, people, you get it. So given that it's random when and where they form, they are truly a disaster waiting to happen. Number 4, wildfires. The topic of wildfires is personal for many out there, and they are truly one of the most terrifying and unpredictable kinds of disasters because there are plenty of ways that a fire can start naturally in the world. Lightning strikes to the ground of a grassy or forest area, or even the sun simply roasting in such a way that fires start after a certain amount of baking. In fact, many consider naturally occurring wildfires a natural way of resetting an area so that it can regrow in an even better way. But the cost of that, especially in the modern world, can be extremely high. In recent years, history has proved that wildfires are some of the most dangerous things around. For if they're not contained in a quick and methodical manner, they spread with such intensity and ferocity that whole forests, whole towns, and more can be burned to the ground. The state of California, once again, has had the dubious honor of being hit with many wildfires over the past decade, due to the combination of record-breaking heat waves and high winds. Once started, they spread, and the damage is incredibly high. This doesn't even mention the 2020 wildfires in Australia that completely devastated the entire continent. These wildfires ravaged the outback and threatened all the wildlife. The sad thing is, even with all the technology that is available, it's truly impossible to predict when and where the next one will start, and thus the danger is ever present. Number 3, global pandemic. If you were to go back to January 2020 and tell people that a global pandemic would soon shut down the world and cause all kinds of chaos, who would believe that? Well, some people would, but most would probably just laugh it off. But as 2020 has taught us, you can never truly predict when a virus will become the most dangerous thing around. In just over a year, the world's view on viruses changed because one was born and transmitted across borders and literally took the planet hostage. And while there are vaccines going out for this particular virus, what about the next one? Yes, the next one. Because while it may seem like we're being worrywarts about what might come next, the truth is, many credible scientists believe that we're closer to the next pandemic than we realize. And that's why so many are not just trying to cure the current crises, but ensure that we're ready if the next one strikes, because we cannot allow what happened in 2020 with the carelessness and the misinformation about the virus to happen again. Should another pandemic drop on the world before it's recovered from the current world, the damage could be truly catastrophic. Number 2, nuclear meltdown. For some, the idea of nuclear power is a dangerous yet necessary measure. However, if a single thing goes wrong with those plants, everything is in danger. You likely know the place where it happened once before, in Chernobyl. And many people across the world have been trying to shut down places like that so that nuclear fallout on a degree doesn't happen again. Yet, nuclear power plants still exist all over the world, which means that the potential for disaster in one of them is still great. The one that is most likely to go nuclear is the Meltdown nuclear power plant, and not for the reasons you might think. It's not that it's designed poorly, but rather that it's just very old. It's one of the earliest designs of nuclear reactors that was designed during the days of the Soviet Union. So there is inherent risk in that. But as you no doubt have noticed, it hasn't gone nuclear despite its age. So where's the issue? That would be with something we've already talked about, earthquakes. The region the Meltdown nuclear power plant is in has tons of earthquake activity, and should a big one hit the area in just the right way, it could cause many problems. Speaking of which, the problem with just shutting down the plant to ensure safety is that this plant powers 40% of the country it's in. So that's not an option until they make another plant that can resist the earthquakes. But even making a newer plant is a problem because, as Chernobyl showed, human error can also be the reason these power plants go nuclear. In short, it's a no-win scenario in the worst of ways, and that's why people want no part of it. Number 1, infrastructure collapse. The world we live in today is vastly different from the one over 120 years ago. Advances in construction and engineering have allowed areas once unreachable by man to be reached with ease. Bridges, roads, highways, and more are just some of the infrastructure that has been put into place to help make life easier and without much hassle. Or at least it would be, if these structures were taken care of. Because throughout the world, and especially in the United States, infrastructure isn't being maintained. Far from it. At times, things are built and just left to be as if they can never break. But that's dangerous, and it's causing problems. For example, in the United States, there are bridges that need repair because chunks are falling down. But instead of fixing the bridge, the city built a catch under it so that they didn't have to shut things down to repair it. The problem with that, of course, is that it's a Band-Aid fix and not meant to be used to get things 100% fixed. As such, if things don't get turned around, bridges collapse, roads could crack open and cause massive accidents, dams could burst and spill their water out everywhere, and so on. There are people who are hired to go and check these infrastructures, but they're understaffed and don't have the support of governments like they should. As such, we are constantly in danger of something going wrong because the right amount of maintenance isn't being done. Thanks for watching. Do these disasters waiting to happen freak you out? Are you prepared for any of them? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you next time. Bye.